Welcome to A Study in Celluloid, everybody. I'm Spencer Henderson, and today I'm going to be talking to you about the 1984 film Dune, directed by David Lynch. Now, most days when somebody asks me who my favorite director is, I'll answer David Lynch. I love this guy. I love almost everything that he's ever done. And I say almost because up until yesterday, I had not seen the movie Dune ever. I had heard of its reputation a little bit. I heard of what a bomb it was at the box office, and I'd read that David Lynch has openly said that he refuses to talk about this movie because of how much of a disappointment it was to him. So, before I get into my thoughts on this movie, I want everybody to know that David Lynch is one of the best directors of all time. He always brings something new to the table, no matter what he's doing. And if you haven't explored his filmography and you're interested in film, you should definitely give him a shot. I think he's one of the best American directors of all time. Now, let's talk about Dune. This movie is extremely disappointing. I don't like Dune that much. There are things to like about it, and let me start off with that. I think overall the directing is fine in this movie. I hear that there was a 3-hour cut of this movie, and I watched the theatrical version, which is 2 hours and 16 minutes. Visually, there are some really cool ideas in Dune, and there are some individual scenes that I think work really, really well. One cool directorial choice that they had in that movie is we hear lots of the characters' thoughts in the movie with a voiceover narration. Considering that lots of these performances are one-dimensional in lots of ways, it's pretty good that we're able to have some sort of idea what's going on inside of these characters' heads. And I also think that probably in the 3-hour cut of this movie, I think it would be an interesting directorial choice to feature the characters' thoughts throughout the entire movie narrated. Now I'm going to get into what I didn't like about Dune, which unfortunately is a good majority of the movie. First of all, let's start with the plot, which is the most glaring issue of the entire movie. I checked last night, and it was an hour and 2 minutes into the movie, and the plot still hadn't kicked off, which I guess I should get into telling you what this story is about. I'll start off by saying Dune is an extremely hard movie to follow. It's extremely difficult to understand who's who, who's talking about who, and what everybody's motivations are. So I'm going to do my best. So basically in the future, there's two different groups of people, and the most valuable resource in the universe is spice. Spice is harvested on the planet Dune, where giant worms are this looming threat for the people who harvest the spice. Things get complicated when the villain of the story and his entourage murder our protagonist's father, who is the Duke and the key holder, I suppose, to all of these resources on the planet Dune. I feel like the event that kicks off the plot of the movie is the father getting murdered. I don't feel like that's a spoiler because it's in the plot on IMDb. That doesn't happen until an hour and 5 minutes into the movie. And then, unfortunately, the rest of the movie, as a result, feels extremely rushed. And the screenplay in this movie is a complete and total enigma, particularly in that first hour that it takes to set everything up, I guess. It is ridiculously hard to follow who is who, what's going on, what everybody's motivations are. Also, watching the movie through today's eyes, the visual effects do look pretty dated, unfortunately. And I can't hold that against the movie too much because I'm sure at the time the effects were great. But unfortunately nowadays they do appear a little bit dated. And when you hold this up to Lynch's other films that don't rely too much on visual effects, or even ones that kind of use more practical approach to effects like The Elephant Man, it doesn't really hold a candle compared to when he has full creative control over the project. Let's get into like the last act of this movie. The movie's only 2 hours and 15 minutes long, and as I said, it takes an hour and 5 minutes for the plot to kick off. The cut of the movie that David Lynch originally had was 4 hours. There was obvious cuts done in the movie, and it's very obvious that they were basically all made at the last in the last parts of the movie, because the ending of this movie feels incredibly rushed, which is pretty disappointing because that's where the movie gets the most exciting. As soon as Kyle MacLachlan's character, Paul, escapes the clutches of the evil people, the movie starts to get at least mildly interesting and entertaining. Unfortunately, as I already stated, this part feels super, super rushed. One of the most obvious places where they cut this movie a ton was in the love story between Kyle MacLachlan's character Paul and I don't even remember her name. That's how underdeveloped this love story was. In fact, I laughingly call it a love story because all that it really showed them do together was kiss. We never really saw their relationship develop. We never understood why they were in a relationship other than maybe an attraction level. So that was really disappointing because I know that in other David Lynch movies, those stories are really, really developed. It just was a little bit disappointing to see how underdeveloped his vision came out in this film. Overall, I was massively disappointed with Dune. I still love David Lynch. Nothing will ever tarnish my love for him. I think that he's a great director, and I absolutely think that people should check out his filmography because even though this movie is disappointing, it's still cool to see a director who has a vision trying to bring his vision, and it might be kind of interesting as a history lesson to see how studio interference can affect a movie. I'm going to give Dune a 4 out of 10. As I stated, I didn't really like this movie at all. I do hope that David Lynch one day comes back and makes one more movie at least. I've been hoping for that. I would love to see a new David Lynch movie. So if by chance he ever watches this, please, David Lynch, come back to the world of cinema. I'm begging you. Coming to you from Colorado, I'm Spencer Henderson, and this is A Study in Celluloid.